So let us go over reading strategies. So as far as reading at university is concerned, the most important thing is for you to be aware of different strategies that are available to you and use the correct one in the correct situation. There is a lot of things that you're supposed to read when it comes to university, and you can't just manage reading every page and following every word. If you cannot understand a word, you check up in the dictionary. You cannot do that, and that is why it is very, very important for you to be able to have some reading strategies. So you don't read every single word of every text you see each day. You have a number of ways of filtering text. So there are some ways that you are going to use to see if this text is necessary for you to read or not. So that is now what we want to understand. So one of these strategies is skimming, scanning, surveying, and also critical reading. So we are going to get to understand these types of ways that we are going to use for us to be able to see if a text will be worthy reading or not. So starting with skimming or skim reading. So what is skimming or skim reading? So skimming means looking at a whole page quickly to find out basically the many topic, whether you need to read it all or just important parts of it, how much time you might need to spend on it. So, for example, you get this book that you've never read before. If you just want to understand basically what is the main topic of this book, maybe it might interest you. So, get to do a skim reading. For example, you just get to look at this book and then maybe the page has just interested you. So, you can just get to read through. You are not really interested in understanding everything, but all you are doing is a quick reading for you just to basically understand the many topic of the passage. Or you might do that in order for you to tell where maybe you are going to gain interest in your reading or not. So you want to decide whether you are going to read this book or not. So you can use skim reading. For example, you just hear, no, these people always say this book is very nice, this novel is very nice. You want to determine if it's really nice or not, so you can use skim reading. You just get to go through basically fast at a very fast rate. And also skim reading is used if you want to determine how much time you can spend on a book. For example, just go on quickly to see what the book is about, and that can help you to determine whether you're going to use spend a lot of time or just a little time on that book. So skimming helps you to find out information quickly. That is for quick search of information. For example, they've given you a research to make and you want to find out information so quickly on that research. So you're going to use what? Skim reading. So it helps you to decide if something is going to be useful to you. Imagine you just hear people praising this book. So I want to see if it is going to be useful also for you. So get to use skim reading. And when you skim, you might look at first the important things that you look at: the title, the headings, some pictures, to get just a sense of what topic is about or what the book is about. So you get to look at those things that are going to interest you, like the topic or the title, some headings, some pictures. So you might skim the information on the packaging of a product to see if it is what you need or not. So that is why we get to skim. So I'm really interested in finding out if that is what you are going to need or not. So there are three types of skimming. We've got preview, overview, and review. So when you are talking about skimming, most often followed by second skimming. So when you use this kind of skimming, which is called the preview skimming, it will be followed by another skimming, which is called the second skimming. And the second skimming is also called a thoroughly reading. So preview skimming is used mostly when you want to select a book to read or to survey a chapter before reading or studying. Now, to survey is just to have a broad understanding about something. More like if you want to buy a land, you generally look at it if there is maybe good soil, water, proper sources of water, and a lot of things, just for you to make sure that you get what to find out that it is a right land that you're going to buy. So if you want to survey a chapter before you're reading, like you just want to find out what is this chapter about, so you are going to use what? Preview skimming. Remember, skimming is just there for you to find out more about this book. And then there's also in finding appropriate material for use in a research. Imagine they've given you this research and you really don't have much knowledge about that research. So now you are trying to look for some books. For example, they've asked you to find the causes of malaria, and you don't know what book you are going to use for to get to find out what the causes of malaria are. So you are going to find a lot of texts which are present for you to be able to read. And so for you to be able to determine which book you are going to be able to read, you are going to use preview skimming so that you'll be able to determine if that book is going to be necessary for a research. So preview skimming is also used in sorting through correspondence before answering it. So these are some things that we get to look at when you're talking about preview reading. So you preview in an effort to learn about the ideas presented and the structure of their development. So the ideas which are presented, you want to learn more about them. Why are they presented in that manner? What has been presented? So the same idea just presented, you get to preview, so you get to understand more. For example, you just know this book, so you want to find out more. Why this book? Why these ideas? So that you get to use preview reading. So when you want to do this kind of preview reading or preview skimming, first we are going to read the first paragraph and the headings and the first sentence of later paragraphs. So basically what you are doing is read the first paragraph and then the headings. If there is any heading, for example, if there are subtitles in your book, you get to read those subtitles, and then you're going to read the first sentence of all the other paragraphs which come after, since you've read the first paragraph and the headings, and then the other paragraphs which follow, read their first sentences, and those are called topical sentences because they contain the main idea of the paragraph. Now after the preview reading, we have got overview. Okay, we've looked at preview and then overview. Said preview is also followed by a second skimming or thoroughly reading. So overview skimming, you use overview skimming to sample the reading material more thoroughly. So it is very different from preview reading, because in preview reading you are more interested in just having a general or broad understanding and you are not wasting more time on your reading. But when it comes to overview, you get to spend more time, and that will be more thoroughly, more like you are paying more attention. So it is more thoroughly than preview, as you may not intend to read further. So remember, in preview we said that you are reading this, for example, maybe if it can interest you for you to be able to read. Maybe you want to find out what book you want to get for your research, you get to use preview. But when it comes to overview, you might not be interested in reading this book again. So that is why you want to read at least a bit in detail. So the method of reading in overview is you get to first, as you do also in preview reading or skimming, you would first read the first paragraph, the heading, and also the first sentences of paragraphs and sections. But in addition, apart from that, just like you did in preview, you alternately read and skim. You alert yourself to the structure and content of the material through an awareness of paragraph patterns, through transitions, and also clue words. So you get now to have a general or broad understanding. So you get to make yourself aware of some structures, some common things that have been stated, some clue words, some transitions. The transitions are just words that get to join sentences. So how are sentences joined and everything else? Because you just want to have a general understanding so that maybe next time you'll not be able to read. So this awareness is going to help you to understand the content and also to recall more information and to use relationships more quickly and clearly. So that is why you get to make yourself aware of the content that is in that book. So that is the difference between preview reading and overview reading. Overview, remember, it is just a bit in detail. And then before, so we've got preview, overview, and the last one type of skimming is a review skimming. So your purpose with review skimming is to refamiliarize yourself with the material you have previously read thoroughly or skimmed. So remember, you first had a preview reading, you had an overview reading. Now you want to refamiliarize yourself. Perhaps you've forgotten some things. Now you read again, so to make sure that you are just familiar with the text that you've just read, so you get to read again. So in this kind, the method that you use when you're talking about review reading, remember you are re-familiarizing yourself. You want to again read it so that you know it again. Maybe there's something that you've forgotten. So prepare yourself by trying to remember as many of the ideas and details clearly. So you read and you try to remember what you read at first in just preview and overview. And then it may be that you already have a good grasp of the main ideas and you'll be stopping primarily to note significant details. For example, you are trying to remember what you already read in preview and overview. So you are trying to remember, and if you can't remember now, you start reading through some significant things. You may try to stop and get to read them more in detail, for example, just to get that understanding. So you may be trying to establish in your mind a sequence of events or produce, or may be attempting to fill in a skeleton outline to clarify the structure of the world. So what you are basically doing is, in your mind, you are trying to connect, you are trying to make a sequence of events. Remember, you already read. Now you want to make it in your mind, how are events flowing? If this is a story about this person who went maybe to the farm and then they met this snake, they were chased. So you are trying to connect these events in your mind as you get to read. But remember, you're not reading basically just everything, because all you are doing is just a general understanding. So that is in review skimming. You want to refamiliarize yourself with the text. So, in summary, skimming as a reading strategy consists of reading the text quickly in order to find out what it is about and how it is organized. So, basically, you want to see if you are going to gain interest in reading. So, this can be done by reading its introduction, as this is likely to briefly say what the text will be about. So, this is when it comes to what? To skimming. So you get to read titles, headings, subheadings also need to be read because they introduce the text and its sections. That is why you get to read subheadings. So you can also look at just some visual representations of the content. So when you're talking about visual representations of the content, all you are talking about is some things that can help you in your reading. For example, you get to look at pictures, you get to look at charts and those things which are going to be able to help you to make sure that you get to understand more about what you are reading. So those are visual representations. So finally, it is also brief to read the first sentence of each paragraph. This sentence, which is called the topic sentence, is normally the first sentence of each paragraph and announces the topic. So when you're talking about the topic sentence or the first sentence of a paragraph, is going to announce a topic. So even when you are getting to write a book, make sure that the first sentence is the one which is going to talk about generally what you are going to talk about in that paragraph. So when you're talking about skimming, what you do is you are going to read one, the title, introduction, headings, subheadings, and then the conclusion. The other thing is read the first sentence, which is called the topic sentence of each paragraph. The other thing is read the conclusion sentence of each paragraph. Okay, each paragraph, read the topic sentence, which is the first sentence, and also the last sentence. And also make sure that you get to read the words which are highlighted in bold, and also look at illustrations such as pictures and tables. So basically that is how you get to read when it comes to skimming. So as texts differ, you may not be able to follow all these things that you've talked about. So just as an activity, you can just try to find a book and try to skim read. That is to just read very fast, look at each paragraph, read the first sentence and the last sentence, and also make sure that you get to read subheadings. So that is skimming, used when you want to find out if you are going to read a book or not, or if a book is going to interest you, or when you are looking for some specific information. Now when it comes to scanning, scanning is simply sweeping your eyes over part of a text to find specific pieces of information. For example, someone has told you to say find the causes of malaria, and you are reading this book which is very big is talking about a lot of things. So you are going to just be reading so very fast, taking your eyes through the text like that. And when you see at any point where there is a cause of malaria, you are going to pause, because that is the information that you want to look for. So that is scanning, just sweeping your eyes through a text. And you do this most of the time, sweeping your eyes through a text to make sure that, just like you do on Facebook, you are trying to scroll anything that gets to interest you, because you are looking for specific information. For example, maybe you are looking for funny videos, so you just be scrolling. When you see any funny video, you're going to pause. So that is scanning basically. So when do you use scanning? So you use scanning to quickly locate specific information from a large quantity of written material. So to scan a text after gaining an overview and skimming, so you first get to skim your work. Remember, skimming is just having a broad understanding, more like a broad understanding. You get to go through to see if you are going to be interested in reading this book. So after you get to read this book and it more feels like you are interested, you may want some portions of information that you want to understand more. So you can now do what? You can now scan. So to scan is just to get to locate specific information. So start scanning the text by allowing your eyes to, or even your finger times, to move quickly over a page. As soon as your eye catches an important word or a phrase, stop reading. You can now read more in details when you catch any important point. Of course, what determines what is important? It's yourself. You know what you really want to find out about. So when you locate information requiring attention, you then slow down to read the relevant section more thoroughly. Any information that you see that will be important, pause and read it more thoroughly. So scanning and skimming are no substitutes for thoroughly reading. So what we are just saying is scanning and skimming should not be substitute as, don't substitute these when you want to perform a thorough reading. That is because for thorough reading you are more interested in understanding the text more. So you can't replace thoroughly reading for scanning and skimming. These are just used for when you are too quick for something. All right, you are not more understanding in reading. You are not more interested in reading everything basically. So an example is looking for names, places, or titles. Look for the visual clues provided by capital letters. This is what you get to use when you are scanning. So you are going to look for names, places, or titles. For example, looking for causes of malaria. So you are going to look for titles that are going to talk about causes of malaria, or even visual clues. For example, you see a person who is holding the head, that might tell you, maybe I might find something that will interest me to know if it causes malaria on this book. So those are something that you get to look at. And also looking for distances or a date. Look for the visual clues provided by numbers or words such as miles, meters, minutes, or hours. Look for an idea, anticipate the ways that could be used to state it. So look for relationship may be expressed after such clue words as thus, consequently, or as a result. So think of scanning like a radar. When using this technique, you should decide what keywords you need to look for before you start reading. So basically, am I looking for the causes of this disease? Am I looking for the consequences? Am I looking for solutions? So you need to know the keywords yourself first before you get to start reading. And then while you are reading, let your eyes or finger move quickly over the page and try to pick out key words rather than focusing on the meaning of individual sentences. You're not interested in individual sentences but on keywords. So you need to determine the keywords that you need yourself. So when you see relevant words, and then you need to stop and have a bit of reading thoroughly. So again, you need to note that the main purpose of scan reading is deciding whether or not something might be useful and worthy reading in more detail. So next, if your scan reveals enough keywords, you should go in on to skim the part that you've just scanned. So remember, scanning is you are interested only in some portions. There are some just keywords that you're interested in, but skimming, you're interested in deciding whether you're going to be able to read basically the whole of this thing. So we've looked at skimming and scanning. What's the difference? To skim is to have more like a general understanding of whether you're going to be interested in reading something or not. Scanning is basically when you are looking for some pieces of information. All right, another reading strategy that we need to have is surveying. Now, to survey, as I said earlier, is more like to find out a broader understanding. For example, when you want to buy a land, you want to see if there is proper water in that land, if that land is good maybe for farming, if that land is free from pests and such things. That is surveying. So in academic context, you have much to read and you need to use various reading skills to help you read more quickly. Surveying a text is another example of such a skill, apart from skimming and scanning, which are the other two. So the literal meaning of survey is to take a broad look at something, just like when you want to take a broad look at a piece of land. Okay. Now, so we are saying with the main purpose, why do we get to survey? The main purpose of surveying a text is to decide on the value of the text. Just like a land, you want to buy this land. Why do you get to look at it before you buy? You want to find out its value. Is it variable? Does it contain the right things that I need to have on my land? So that is basically the main purpose of doing a survey reading. You want to find out if there is value in that text and to determine whether it is worthy reading, because it's not everything basically that you are able to read. Not everything is going to interest you, so I want to find out if it is worthy reading. Okay, so if it is a worthy reading, then you're going to proceed and read in an appropriate way, such as skimming or the or for the many points, or taking notes. So taking notes is basically getting to put down after reading. So if you read what is important, you get to write it down. That is taking notes. So there is taking notes and making notes. So to take notes is when you are reading, you are taking note of important points. For example, you read, you find a cause. Okay, you take note. This is an important cause. For example, you can underline important points. That is taking notes. But making notes is where you get now to write down. You are writing down, so that next time if there will be need, you are going to refer to what you've written down. All right, so what parts of the text should you look at when you are surveying? So as surveying looks at the general aspect of a text, it is similar to skimming, and you will need to pay attention to some of the many features of a text. For example, you need to look at the title, the introduction, in order to understand the gist and assess whether the text is relevant or not. You want to find out if this document is important for you to read. So you're going to look at the title and the introduction. Apart from that, you also need to consider the aspects such as who is the author. Okay, remember, maybe for example you're looking at the causes of malaria, and you start reading something which was written by, let's say, by an engineer. An engineer is really not an expert in causes of malaria and those things. So you need to look at who is the author. Do they have an expert in that field? Are they good at what you are looking for? You can't start reading something about medicine which was written about an engineer. That is not correct. And you can't read something about building this house which was written by a doctor. It doesn't just make sense because there's not an expert in that field. So that's why it is important also to look at the author. So you do all this in order for you to decide if it is a credible source, or if the information that is going to be presented or which is presented is worthy reading or not. So in short, when you're surveying a text, the following will be important. So you need to look at the details of the author, the date of publication, because some things were published some years ago and they do not apply now. For example, someone might have said some 20 years or 40 years ago that there is no cure for this disease. Maybe just 2 years ago, the cure for that disease was found. So that is why you need to read even documents which have been written in the recent times. And also you need to look at the title and subtitle. You need to look up the abstracts, introduction, conclusion, section headings, graphics. Graphics include just charts, diagrams, pictures. So you need to look at what is the general understanding of this text. What is the text really talking about? So those are some things that you consider when you're doing a survey reading. So note that when surveying a text, unlike when skimming, it is not usually necessary to read the first and last lines of each paragraph, especially for longer texts. This would take too much time because like you want to know almost everything. So you'll not be able to read just basically all the sentences. So your interest is more on the introduction, the conclusion. You get to see how the whole passage is connecting and what the passage is basically talking about. Okay, so we've looked at surveying, uh, skimming, scanning. Now let's look at critical reading. Now, being critical in an academic context does not just mean criticizing, just like the word critical comes from criticize. Being critical doesn't just mean finding fault. That's the meaning of criticize. Being critical also means understanding how ideas have been arrived at and evaluating their strengths and weaknesses. For example, not because something was written, it doesn't mean when something was written by an expert that it is always true. Remember, they are human and they are exposed to error, so they can make mistakes. That is why a critical reader should be able to evaluate text. You need to look at the strengths and weaknesses of the text. Just like when you are in church, you're listening to this man of God. It's not that because I am men of God, you need to just accept everything they say. Some verses they might quote a verse and they quote it wrongly. So it doesn't mean that you cannot go and check in your Bible. So that is the importance of critical reading. You get to evaluate some weaknesses of the text that has been presented. So some things that you look at when you are talking about critical reading. You need to recognize the writer's purpose and underlying values, that is social, cultural, and historical influence. So why did the writer write this passage? So that is the purpose of the writer. That is in critical reading, because some might have written it just to win for political purposes, others might have written it just to gain that fame. So you need to look at why did the writer write this passage. That is a critical reader. And also you need to recognize patterns of the argument. Is the writer supporting one argument, or they don't really know what they're talking about? For example, they support this idea and then they also go against it like that. So you need to understand that. And also you need to look at linking ideas in the text to other ideas and texts. So if you find some ideas in this text, there are some other things that you already know that you have ever read. So are they agreeing with some other things that you have ever read before? So that is a critical reader. You are relating things that you know together with what you are reading, and also exploring alternatives to the stated ideas. So if there's something that have been put on, what are some of the other things that you can add on apart from what you've just read? So that is being a critical reader. For example, not everything can be stated. What of something that have not been stated? Are you thinking of anything else? And also recognizing the assumptions and underlying values that you may bring to your reading. So at times when you get to read, there are some things that you have in mind. For example, you have got some assumptions. You assume maybe this is true. So as you get to read, you are going to find out if your assumptions are correct or they are wrong. So being an active reader means being a critical reader. So an active reader is the same as a critical reader. Because when you're actively reading, you are interacting with the text. Interacting means you are able to find out what the text is about, you are able to question the text, and you can derive sense from what the text is about. So, the purpose of critical reading is to gain a deeper understanding of the material. So, you want to really have a deeper understanding of that material. It involves reading in depth and actively questioning what you read. So don't accept just everything that you read. Question it. Is it really reliable? Is it correct? Has the information presented in a right way? So some questions you should ask yourself while reading are below. You need to understand about the author's purpose. So about the author's purpose, what you need to understand is why has the author written the material? For whom is it intended? Is it writing to children or to adult? Is it to those people who are learned or those who are not learned? So and what theoretical perspectives has the author taken? Are there some theories in the writing or there are all opinions that he thinks he's writing about? So and what does this perspective relate to other materials in the field? So if there are some perspectives what the author thinks or what the author has written about, how does it relate to some other things in that same field? For example, if it is in medicine, how does this information relate to some other things which are in medicine? So you get to look at that. And also you need to look at the content. That is one also important thing. What is the main theme or thesis? So thesis is just the main idea, or what is the main argument of that text that you are reading. So you need to know what is it really that the text is talking about. What are some of the explanations of evidence? What are the main points used to support these ideas? Which aspect of the topic has the author chosen to concentrate on? Are they trying to concentrate on one thing and omitting some other things? What are the author's assumptions? Are they trying to assume some things? Are they explicitly stated? So when you say explicitly stated, is they have not said it direct. They want you to interpret. So there is an explicit meaning and an implicit meaning. So when you okay, explicit is something that is directly explained. So something that can explain itself. For example, I'll say my stomach is aching. So that is just direct. But some people wouldn't say that direct as my stomach is aching. They might use another statement, for example, maybe like a parable or something. So you need to imply or to just interpret. That is implicity meaning. So there is explicity and implicity. So if there are some assumptions that have been stated by the author, have they been explicitly stated? Have they been said directly? Is there evidence of deliberate bias? If the author tries to just concentrate on one side, maybe they're just trying to support this thing and not supporting the other. Do they have evidence why they're supporting such things they're supporting? So those are some of the things that you get to look at. So, and also you need to look at which of your questions about the subject does the author answer and which ones are left. For example, on this very subject that you are reading, you have got some questions. Is it everything? Is the questions being answered in the reading? If you're talking about causes of this disease, are the questions that you have answered in this reading? If they are not answered, well, you get to look at them more. Apart from understanding the content, you also need to understand the structure. What is the framework used to organize the material? Is it clearly explained? How are they presenting the material? The theme, the ideas, the arguments reflected in the structure. So, how is the structure presented? When you're talking about structure, it's just the outline. How is it written? How is this material written? Okay, so that is about the structure of the material. And how is the content organized and developed within the framework? How does the conclusion relate to the introduction? You need to know that when you are getting to read, the introduction states the main point of the idea, and then the conclusion is going to again talk about the introduction. So when you write a story, make sure that the conclusion is agreeing with the introduction. And also need to look at the style and format of your reading. So in what style has the material been written? For example, is it formal or informal? Is it simple or complex? Okay, is it persuasive, narrative, didactic, and analytical? So you get to look at the style. Is it trying to force a certain idea or is trying to encourage you? Is it trying to narrate an idea or trying to persuade you? How does the style and format influence your reaction to the material? So that is now personally to you. The way they've written it, how does it influence the way you are reading it? So basically this is it when it comes to reading. These are some reading strategies: skimming, scanning, surveying, and also critical reading. So basically when you're talking about critical reading, you are more interested in a very powerful understanding of the text. So we need to pay attention even to the things which are stated there. Thank you so much for watching and stay blessed.